you and what do you do?
So my name is Nicole Gardner. I'm a senior human resources business partner for Wireless Advocates. Wireless Advocates is a national third-party retailer located inside of Costco, and we're a wireless solutions retailer. So we provide all the wireless solutions inside of Costco and most domestic military bases. I support about approximately 900 field sales employees across the United States, from Hawaii and California over to New York and the East Coast, as well as two directors and their leadership teams.
And tell us a journey of how you got your first job in HR.
Yeah, so I have a non-traditional HR background. I actually started in finance as a finance analyst, but knew I always wanted to be in HR. Really from the very first time I got started in a professional organization at Boeing, started um, reaching out, finding opportunities in training, in employee development, and coaching. And then right before I took my first HR job, I had reached out to an HR manager that I had worked with previously in a finance position, and she had been mentoring me and advised me to get my PHR certification, which I did. And then as I was applying for jobs, found out there was a job open in her organization. And she took a chance on me as a new HR person, as a new HR generalist, and brought me into my first role.
Super cool. And just from doing these interviews, one of the things that I have found is that a lot of the successful people in HR come from a finance background as well. And they were working with an HR professional and they were thinking, they're like, hey, I would really love to do that instead of the work that I'm doing. So it's very interesting to see that commonality, going through these interviews. And one of the reasons that they say it makes them more successful is it gives them a more holistic view of the business, which we could talk about in the later questions. So I'd love to hear more about that. But first, tell us about some of the steps that you took to ensure you had continued career growth within HR.
Yeah. So, it is funny. I think a lot of what I learned in finance, certainly set me up to be a great HR business partner. And since I got into HR, since I got my certification, I've continued to grow my education in HR, whether or not that's attending local SHRM chapter meetings, local HR conferences. I actually recently completed my master's degree. I have a master's now in organization and leadership development. And that was perhaps the biggest undertaking I've taken recently to further my career. And it did two things for me. One, my master's degree reinforced my love for HR and my love for organizational development and my passion for that, as well as gave me insight into what I want to do next in HR and how I want to keep moving up into HR leadership positions and work with senior and executive leaders to implement people strategy across the organization.
Hey, super exciting. And then while you're going through this journey, what are some of the skills that are using on a weekly basis or daily basis that are really helping you be better at your profession?
Yeah, I think the most important skill I've learned is how to be a good listener, and how to be an active listener. As HR professionals, as professionals in general, we have 1,000 things going on at once. And it can be difficult sometimes to put all that aside and give yourself wholly to a conversation. But taking that time to put everything else aside and just really focus on that person you're with, and actively listen is so crucial. HR is really about forming relationships, and you get things done by forming relationships with others within the organization, and really having active listening, not having recognizing when you have biases, or recognizing, when you've made assumptions about a situation, and being able to put that aside so you come into a conversation with open and honest curiosity. And then the other thing that's, been really important is being flexible. I've certainly in my career thought, gosh, I have the best compensation plan or the best performance management program possible, but maybe had trouble getting the organization on board because it just didn't fit for them. And so really tailoring, being willing to go back to the drawing board, being not so attached to my idea that I can't change it, and be flexible and make this program work for my organization. And being flexible and keeping an open mind is also really important in a lot of areas of HR. You may go into an investigation or into an interview thinking, gosh, I know exactly what's going on here and I know exactly what I'm going to do next. But keeping that open mind, actively listening, you can gather more information that changes your action or changes your point of view. And so really, being flexible, being an active listener. And finally, the skill I've had to really work to develop that's made me so successful is having the ability to compartmentalize. HR can be a tough job. We work with terminations, reduction of force, really tough investigations, and being able to compartmentalize that and be at peace with, I've done the best job I can, and then leave that at work and not let that bleed over into other parts of your life or bleed over into the next day at work, has been really a skill that has been really useful for me and really helpful.
Hey, very exciting to hear. And then while you're going through your communication and trying to develop a better workflow, you're using some tools that is making your life easier. And that could be like anything from Excel to HRIS system, whatever it may be. Talk to us about some of the tools that you really like that help level up your game.
Yeah. I really like Microsoft OneNote. We use the Microsoft suite in my office. I really like OneNote. I can have different notebooks for my different projects or for my different client groups, and all my notes are there. All my one-on-one notes, all my investigation notes, they're all in one place. Makes it really easy to go back and read my notes. Love Excel. Got a finance background. Really love Excel for data analysis or tracking or really anything. I also really love outside resources like Harvard Business Review and SHRM. They're great places to find new ideas and find resources and tools. We work with a law firm called Littler Mendelson, and they have a great legal tool that is really helpful for me to keep up to date with the changing employment law landscape of the United States. And then my favorite HR tool really is having my coworkers, having really great coworkers around me who are willing to give me a second opinion and bounce ideas off.
Hey, that's great to hear. Yeah, I think nobody's mentioned that so far in terms of using their coworkers as tools and resources, but it's so important because often we'll look for a while via Google, whatever it may be, and then we just got to ask the person right next to us. I always think show some initiative first that you tried to do it on your own before you ask the question, and then they'll always be very responsive to help you.
Yeah. Or just ask for a second opinion. I think in HR a lot of times, even if you come across a situation that may seem to be very similar to one you've worked on before, because you're working with people, every situation is just a little different. And sometimes, like you said, do your research ahead of time and then go to your coworkers and say, gosh, this is my plan. Poke some holes in it. Like, what do you think? What am I missing? And that has just been really crucial to me in not only developing as an HR professional, but also in providing the best service possible to my customers.
And having experience as an HR business partner, HR generalist, and dealing with different HR roles. What do you think goes into picking an HR role that you'll enjoy? And it's hard to know, especially if you're just starting out, and you might have to do some testing. But I'd love to hear your thoughts here.
The number one thing that I look for when I look in any HR role is what is the HR team like? As HR professionals, just based on your role, you can be a little isolated from the rest of the organization because you're there, you act in a lot of different capacities. And so having a strong team that, like I said, that you can go to for advice, that you can ask questions, get a second opinion, as well as having a team who will support you on those hard days, on those days when just, nothing's gone right, or, employees are not happy, and they're letting you know about it. Having that team who will support you and lift you up, and not use that as use that as a weakness against you, is the first thing I look for when I'm looking at a new organization. And then I also look at the company and what's their culture. Are they open and inclusive? It's a lot of questions you can ask to discover this. Do they seem to be siloed? Do they seem to be, secretive? Do they not like HR? One of the first things I ask is, I might ask an HR professional is, tell me about your relationship with your clients, with your customers. And that gives me a lot of insight into, is this an organization that values HR as a business partner, and as a true partner that has an impact. And then finally, and this is something that maybe you don't always think about, what kind of work does the company do? Are you interested in it? I think one of the things I really like about HR is it gives me a chance to really see an organization work together at all levels, right? Like I can interact with every department within an organization. And so is the work they're doing, is the product that they're putting out, is that interesting to you? Is that something, you want to learn more about, and you want to apply your HR knowledge to? I find to be very, very important. Is just, what does the company do, and does it interest you?
So true. And I think, you hit it on the nail with you're interviewing the company as well. And it's not surprising that not everybody enjoys the role. So making sure that the HR professionals that you'd be working with actually enjoy their work there.
Yes.
Yeah, I've heard of so many stories where people end up working in HR and they love HR, but the couple of professionals around them don't love it. And they're like, why is this the case? And yeah, doing everything you can to avoid that scenario.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk a little bit about the future of HR and where you see it going. We have new industries, new tools. We have obviously what's happened in the last year and a half has been pretty incredible with people moving to remote workforce, and we have social media. So many different things going on. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on where the future of HR is going.
Yeah. You bring up a really good point. 2020 was really an unprecedented year in HR. If you had told me when I started in HR, you're going to have to manage through a pandemic, I probably would have laughed at you. And I think one of the things that's really important for organizations is, or for HR, excuse me, in organizations, is how are leaders successful when they're leading fully remote teams? We saw whole companies where now everybody's working from home, and you're not meeting face to face, which has been a key part of building relationships and building a team feeling. And so us as HR professionals, really educating yourself on how do remote teams work, how does leadership style translate across remote teams, what tools and resources can you make available to your managers and leaders to improve their leadership. I actually did my master's capstone on this. It's just so important, on relational leadership and really seeing people not just as employees, not just as a number, but really as people, and understanding their their challenges and their hopes and their dreams. And also, I really see HR continuing to grow from an administrative into a strategic function. And what I mean by that is, helping employees, automating as much as we can, making certain things self-service, right? Giving employees the power to own, their 401k, their payroll decisions, that kind of thing. Giving that power to the employees to free up HR to really look at, how do we develop organizations, that are remote or are technology. And then I think you bring up a good point in the beginning when you talked about the director of technology in HR role. There's a lot of new technology, a lot of new HRIS systems. How is HR, are you learning that technology and incorporating it into your business to meet the needs of the organization as it continues to grow.
Yeah, I completely agree. You have to be very adaptable and flexible and always ask yourself, how do I become a resource for where the industry is going rather than, what is right now and then what is to come.
Yeah.
And let's talk about some of the hurdles that HR professionals face in the workplace and how they can be solved. So if you can talk through some of the hurdles that people face, some of the positions that you've had, and the solutions that you have in place to solve them, that'd be great.
Yeah. I think in many organizations, you may have, and I've certainly seen this, have managers that are resistant maybe to seeing HR as a business partner, as anything other than when I have an employee issue. Excuse me, when I have an employee issue, I'll come and tell you about it. They maybe don't want HR to attend their staff meetings, or they don't want to meet regularly with HR to discuss their teams. They want to keep you at that HR that at an arm's distance. You can also have company. I've certainly seen this companies where the culture is toxic. It's secretive. It's siloed. People are hesitant to come forward and bring up issues of some really serious issues in a workplace, or just things that aren't working. And really, as an HR person, how I've addressed these is really two routes. One, it's understanding that HR in some ways is a long game. My impact, won't necessarily, my long-term impact won't necessarily happen in the first 6 months. I might talk about an idea for 2 years in an organization before it gains traction. So being consistent and bringing up best practices, being consistent and bringing up strategies that support the business, being consistent, socializing those ideas, that's really important. And then build relationships. If you're brand new in an organization, if you're brand new in an HR role, one of the best things you can do is just meet with as many leaders as you can. I find having open and honest curiosity has really helped me find a seat at the table at any organization I'm in, right? I can go into somebody's office and say, Josh, tell me about what you do. Tell me about what you do in this organization. Tell me about your role. And I don't want to talk about anything HR related. Just tell me about what you do and why you like what you do and why you don't like what you do. Building that relationship is really key to getting things done, especially in an organization that may be hesitant to open up to HR or bring HR to the table.
I completely agree. I think it is very hard to get a seat at the table being an HR position. Ultimately, that does come down to your ability to work with those stakeholders, like you said, and hone in on your communication to ensure that they value you. And let's say, for some of our audience that are watching, they want to become an HR business partner. What are some signs that that role is right for them versus the other roles in HR?
Yeah, so I would say, you want to be an HR business partner. Are you curious about how people and how organizations work? Um, you know, do you have an open and honest communication? Do people trust you? Do you enjoy coaching? Do you enjoy problem solving? A lot of my job is listening and then developing solutions to support the business, but it all comes from listening and building those relationships and having an open and honest curiosity about what's going on in the organization. You need to enjoy talking to people. You need to enjoy working with others in the organization, even if they're hesitant about working with you, and having that patience and that resiliency to keep after a problem, even when it seems you've exhausted all other solutions. So I think, if you sit back and say, gosh, I'm really interested in how organizations and people work. I really am interested in seeing things from a 30,000-foot level, but I also like to get into the details and solve the day-to-day problems. And I enjoy talking and coaching to people, then by all means look into a job as a business partner. It's I have loved it, and it's really been a great fit for me, and really a great passion of mine.
Yeah, that's so great to hear. I think, just from these interviews that people who do become HR business partners, they have a little bit of like an entrepreneurship bug within them. And that type of energy that comes with entrepreneurship, where they're like, oh, I really want to learn, a lot of different things and soak up all that knowledge.
Exactly.
Um, and before we hop, is there any other advice you have for people watching who are looking to break into HR or level up their career if they're already in HR and become an HR business partner?
Yeah, so I would say if you're looking to break into HR, make as many connections in the HR world as you can. When I was first wanting to move from a non-HR job into HR, I sought out HR professionals. I made my career decisions known, talked with some key individuals, and just reached out and asked them how did they get into HR. What does it take to be in HR? So make as many connections as you can. Go to local SHRM chapter meetings, whether they be virtual or in person. If you can, attend conferences or telecons. There's a lot of free resources out there, actually. And when you're in those telecons or in those conferences, make connections with the people who are there. Talk to them. Hey, how did you get to HR? And then take that onto LinkedIn. Connect with people on LinkedIn. I love it when people reach out to me on LinkedIn and say, "Gosh, I'm really interested in moving into HR. Can you tell me about how you got into HR? Can you give me some advice?" I'm always more than happy to reach out and have those conversations. And then seek out opportunities in your current position or your current organization, um, to do things in HR. Can you do training? Can you do skills planning? Um, Problem solving? Really seeking out these opportunities in an organization, that you may already have, that can build your career in HR. And then if you're already in HR and you're looking to build, into a business partner role, um, you know, pair up with one of the business partners. Maybe if you're working in benefits or employee services right now, pair up with one of the business partners and work with them, and shadow them if you can, and take on those projects where you can, that are more strategic and are focused on the people strategies of the organization. But the biggest thing you can do is just raise your hand and ask and make as many connections as you can.
Well, Nicole, it was great having you today for the interview. And if students want to connect with you via LinkedIn, can they go ahead and do that?
Yes, I love it. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn and connect.
If you're watching this video, the chances are her LinkedIn URL is in the description below, so you can click through there if you want to go ahead and connect with her. And I highly recommend that you do to go ahead and expand your network and help build your career. And again, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Joshua. I've had so much fun.